I set out on a solitary hiking adventure in a remote region of the Colorado wilderness in the unsettling year 2020. My goal was to escape the tumult of the outside world and find tranquility in the outdoors. The trail I picked was unmarked, concealed by a stand of gnarled trees, and difficult to see from the underbrush. The environment changed into a barren and eerie place as I traveled further into the forest. Trees with bent limbs and withered leaves appeared to be speaking of long-ago eras. The worn-out and abandoned route suggested infrequent use. Long shadows created by the sun's ascent and decline added to the ominous mood. My movements became more cautious, and the mounting anxiety heightened my senses. Then the silence was broken by an echoing whistle. A string of eerie sounds hovered in the air before disappearing suddenly. My breath caught in my throat, and I stopped to look around for any other hikers. I could not. The stress grew with each cautious stride. The whistle recurred, this time being closer and clearer. My senses shouted for me to turn around as an ice shudder raced down my spine. But a tenacious curiosity drove me on, persuading me that it was just a wind or my imagination-related illusion. The eerie whistling reappeared shortly after that, this time becoming much closer. My anxiousness gnawed at my resolve as my heart raced in my chest. Despite having some doubts and feeling a heavy weight in the pit of my stomach, I persisted. The route took me to a little area that was tucked in between some rocky boulders. There was an air of impending catastrophe. There, using twisted branches and chilling inventiveness, someone had created a complex den. I felt a blow of understanding. This is where the eerie melody came from. I experienced a wave of vulnerability and had the impression that someone was watching me. I fixed my attention on the den, waiting for a menacing presence to show itself. But instead, a goat's unblinking gaze greeted me. Although its eyes were lifeless, they penetrated my soul. It was larger than any goat I had ever seen, and it remained strangely still. Its stature was unsettling. As the goat's jaw split and the whistle that had followed me on my voyage emerged, fear tightened around my chest. With escape plans racing through my head, I turned and sped down the rocky trail without stopping. I had to fight for every stride as adrenaline raced through my body, but I dared not look behind me. The shrill whistle penetrated my bones like a persistent pursuer. The roar finally subsided as I emerged from the trees into a wide space, leaving me gasping for air and shaking. The wilderness's seclusion had developed into a real-life nightmare, a terrifying force that defied logic. Afterward, I was hesitant to tell my story for fear of mockery and skepticism. But the more I studied local myths, the more the puzzle pieces came together. It wasn't just a regular encounter. It was a struggle against something evil and mysterious, a predatory force that preyed on the unwary. My terrifying encounter in the wilds of Colorado in the year 2020 will live on in my memory as a chilling reminder that certain mysteries are better left unexplained, and that the depths of nature can hold unfathomable terrors. My family and a few close friends started an annual custom that combined delight with unsettling anticipation in 2006 while on a camping vacation deep in the Oregonian woods. Every year, my father and Jake, his friend, would lead us kids on a shadow hunt, a custom that was formed out of their naughty desire to spark our imaginations. Our fathers gathered us around the campfire one dark night. They regaled us with tales of elusive evil creatures hiding in the shadows, their faces lit by flickering flames. They depicted these creatures as predatory shapeshifters that are drawn outside by the light of the moon to prey on the unwary. The air became tense with a sense of dread as darkness engulfed the woods. We entered the shadows armed with homemade weapons, propelled forward by a combination of terror and fascination. Every step we took was accompanied by the smell of wet dirt and rustling leaves. Our footsteps were accompanied by the distant hoots of owls and the hushed whispering of the wind as we made our way through dense underbrush and meandering routes during the hunt. Trees took on the form of menacing, gnarled sentinels under the eerie glare of the moon. A chilling whistle that echoed through the solitude pierced the darkness and chilled our bones, Although Jake's promises and our own eagerness encouraged us to continue, we exchanged anxious looks. It was only a game after all. As the second whistle got closer, the hair on our necks stood up. With shadows working together to hide the source of the eerie sound, the woodland appeared to be holding its breath. We continued, breathing more quickly as excitement and trepidation mixed. The air became heavier with an ominous force as we went further into the woods. The woods appeared to be closing in on us, their gnarled branches casting hideous shapes in our peripheral vision. We were duped by the shadows, which appeared to twist and change in an odd manner. A rustling sound in the underbrush startled us and caused an adrenaline rush. The growing discomfort was unabated despite Jake's assurances in a whisper. I felt as though I was being washed, and every wind rustling and sigh had a menacing undertone. A black figure that was changing shapes and contorting appeared as we made our way into the darkness. A creature with a twisted and ugly appearance that was both humanoid and bestial was seen in the moon's weak light. Its extended limbs and gnarled features defied logic as it moved, the air appearing to grow colder as it did so. We watched in horror as the thing focused its strange eyes on each of us, its gaze entering our very souls. The words of rationality were drowned out by a visceral horror that seized me. We were driven to run away by the panic, but some unseen power prevented us from doing so. Jake suddenly called us back, as the quiet suddenly broke. Our fathers broke the magic as they emerged from the shadows, bringing reality back into sharp focus. The only thing the creature left behind was a lingering feeling of dread as it vanished into the darkness. As a result of our strong imaginations, we sought to forget the encounter after it happened. We reassured ourselves that it was only a game gone too far as the campfire's laughter seemed to dispel the unease that had persisted. Though I can't help but wonder if anything truly horrible had crossed our path that night on nights when the moon casts an unnerving glow and shadows dance in the corners of my vision. Deep inside the Oregonian forests, secluded. My family spent 10 years in a remote cottage tucked away in the thick forests of northern Canada. There, away from the bustle of civilization, in the embrace of nature, our existence was peaceful. Our cabin was surrounded by a collection of comparable homes, several of which were occupied by nearby families. Little by little, trails of friendship began to connect our cabins. We strengthened our ties through interacting over meals, stories, and laughs. It was a perfect existence, until a sudden shift destroyed our feeling of security. I was reading deeply one moonless night when the sound of frightened animals in the distance broke the silence. I sprang up startled and looked out the window to see what the noise was about. My gaze landed on the cattle, who were running madly as though being pursued by an ominous fear. I started to feel uneasy because I could smell something evil in the darkness. I strained my eyes and felt movement in the edges of my field of vision. The presence of a huge deer, whose form was disguised by the shadows, was frightening. I could feel the creature's terrible energy piercing into me as it fixed its eyes on me. My heart was racing, and I began to feel anxious. Weeks went by. My memories of that night receded into the background, till another ominous event disturbed our tranquil lives. My wife woke me up one night with a shaky voice. We noticed an odd sound in the stifling silence that was dragging and scraping noises coming from all around the cabin. We had the impression that some unseen evil was playing a cruel game of cat and mouse with us. I stood vigil by the window while holding a firearm, all of my senses on high alert. After the chilling noises stopped, there was only a strange quiet. The next morning, with my wife pleading with me to be cautious, I set out to ask our neighbors for information. An unsettling feeling and a sense of being washed over overcame me as I walked the usual path between the cabins. My pulse was racing as I turned to see the deer once more. It fastened its unsettling intelligence glistening eyes on its victim like a predator. I felt a fundamental horror that compelled me to flee from its stare. I went to a neighbor's cabin and described my experiences in an effort to gain some understanding. He mentioned evil spirits and old curses that tormented the woodland, which surprised me. His remarks gave me the chills and placed a terrifying pall over my mind. In the weeks that followed, I became increasingly paranoid and began to question the security of our haven. Even after the disturbances subsided, their effects persisted, niggling at the edges of my awareness. We made the choice to leave our once cherished cabin behind and move closer to society. Years later, I'm sharing this story as a cautionary tale. The vivid memories of that period serve as a menacing warning that certain powers exist that are beyond our knowledge and are concealed in the depths of the unknown.